Good morning. This is Arlan Suderman, Chief Commodities Economist at StoneX, coming to you from the trading floor at about 9 a.m. on August 1st. It's the first of the month, and with that, we see that President Trump has announced his new tariff rates on a number of different countries. It's a 10% base rate. Pretty much around the world on most countries that we trade with, 15% tariffs on those with which we have a significant trade deficit. And then there's about 15 other countries that have even higher tariffs. That's going to be interesting to watch. Now, many of those countries have indicated already that they're going to really double down on the negotiations to try to get better deals. Overall, if we look at some of those numbers right now, we're seeing a 24% tariff rate on China. Vietnam got a 20% after their trade deal, so the China one's still higher than that. Indonesia with their trade deal at 19%, Japan at 15%, Korea at 15%. So China is still higher. Now, we are still on the suspension of those higher rates for China until August 12th. We have a trade agreement on President Trump's desk to extend that suspension another 90 days, according to reports. But he has not yet signed off on it. I think one of the keys to remember here is, to the best of our knowledge and reports we've seen, that that's about all that trade deal does, is extend things for another 90 days. Now, China needs our advanced chips. The United States, as well as the rest of the world, needs China's rare earth minerals and magnets. So the two need each other right now, but they remain far apart. And so while it is anticipated that President Trump is going to sign off on another 90-day extension of those suspensions with China, we don't know that for a fact. So this is going to be something that's going to keep the uncertainty high here until we learn more about that. Meanwhile, China is still not buying U.S. ag commodities or energy commodities for that point either. In fact, if you may not realize, but many of the retaliatory tariffs from Trump 1.0 are still in effect, but they've just simply been suspended. China has suspended charging them against us, but they have started to unwind those retaliatory tariffs to give them leverage in this round of negotiations that they have. So 3 rounds of negotiations thus far haven't really done much for moving commodities to China. They primarily have simply opened the door for U.S. chips, advanced chips, to go to China, and therefore rare earth minerals and magnets to come to the United States. And that's about all that's been accomplished. We have many differences still remaining between the two. Now, as we look at some of the other countries that are involved overall, we're still seeing, I think it's noteworthy that Canada's tariffs went up to 35%. All these new tariffs announced today go into effect in 7 days. And so that gives another week, basically a little less than a week, for them to continue negotiations and try to get some more deals. And we've been having a regular flow of some of these trade deals being announced, and investors are cautiously optimistic we're going to see more of these trade deals come. I mentioned 35% tariff with Canada. Mexico gets another 90-day reprieve to continue to work on a trade deal, as President Trump seems to want to work. And it goes back to what I said all the way back in last April, that, in fact, I think I was earlier in that February, that President Sheinbaum of Mexico has probably done the best job of any leader I've seen in working with President Trump. But there's still significant issues there to be overcome. With Canada and Mexico, as we see so far, anything covered by the USMCA trade agreement is not affected by these higher tariffs. So we're continuing to see the flow of grain and oil seeds to Mexico. No retaliatory tariffs back from Mexico against that at this point. The one point of interest is the 50% tariff on Brazil. And that affects many products coming from Brazil, including coffee, but beef is the one I'm most interested in, with the tight supply of protein that we have in the United States, and the fact that many diets and weight treatments are focusing on high protein diets right now in the United States. Demand for meat seems to be somewhat inelastic, meaning it's hard to ration demand with higher prices. So we're seeing record high prices for cattle right now. Overall, not the last couple of days, we come back off of those record highs, but record high prices overall in recent days for cattle. But yet, the latest data for May and June both showed beef consumption up 4% year on year by volume, not just by price, but by volume. And so Americans continue to want their beef, the highest priced of those proteins. Eventually, with the Brazil being our largest supplier of beef, about 27% of the market share of imported beef into the United States, if that gets cut off, we will find other sources of protein. It's just going to take time for that to happen. And that's one of the reasons we've seen so much strength. We're going to be feeding a lot more beef in Mexico with the border being closed, sending U.S. corn down there to feed those cattle, and then shipping that beef north to the United States. Now, as we look overall, I want to back up again and look at the market response to all this so far. We are seeing the stock market lower today, but overall, we're not seeing the panic that we saw back in April. And that's the market adjusting to these uncertainties, adjusting its expectations. In April, it was pricing in worst case scenarios. It's no longer doing that. Is there uncertainty? Yes, we saw the job market this morning come in disappointing. Overall, was just 73,000 jobs created. Then when we look at the previous 2 months, a massive downward adjustment of the two previous months. I believe it was 258,000 downward adjustments. Yes, 258,000 downward adjustments of the two previous months combined. So overall, that's not good at all. Now, we're not seeing firms overall laying off a lot of people as a general statement, but they're allowing their workforces to tighten up through attrition. And so they're not doing a lot of hiring. Earnings reports have generally been good. That's one of the reasons we've hit record highs in the stock market in recent days. But these firms saying with the amount of uncertainty that's out there, we want to make sure and kind of tighten up our fixed costs just in case things do go south. And that's what has the job market concerned. So the market has raised its expectations after this job report of a September rate cut by about 30 percentage points this morning. And now as a day or two ago, the prospect of two rate cuts this year and a market size were kind of a 50-50, leaning toward just one rate cut. Now it's back to expecting two rate cuts. One other thing I wanted to focus on here today, and that is what's happening in China. China's economy is continuing to struggle, and as we look at its manufacturing indices, its property sector, we're seeing deterioration of its economy. So it is implementing a major project to try to stimulate its economy. It broke ground 12 days ago on a mega dam project on the river in Tibet. Try to pronounce it, but I'm afraid that I wouldn't do it justice. This is dubbed a century project. It will link 5 cascading hydropower stations over a 50-kilometer stretch where the river drops 2,000 meters, tapping some huge energy potential, that declining water dropping in elevation to create energy. By cutting out the bends in the rivers and diverting the water through tunnels, China aims to maximize efficiency through although the job will be quite difficult. It's expected to cost 1.2 trillion yuans, and that equates to about $160 billion investment with the cheap labor that they have in China. It's the largest hydropower scheme ever attempted. When finished sometime in the 2030s, it should produce about 300 billion kilowatt hours annually. That's 3 times the Three Gorges output, if you're familiar with that massive hydroelectric dam there on the Yangtze River. The new project is expected to create over 60 gigawatts of capacity, enough to power 300 million people. It's expected to save 90 million tons of coal each year once completed, which would be the equivalent of about 54 billion cubic meters of natural gas. Now, it was approved in December as part of China's 2060 carbon neutrality drive, but it's gonna use a lot of carbon to get it constructed in the meantime. It is going to bring roads and grid links and jobs to remote Tibet and boost overall revenue by an estimated 2.8 billion annually. Now, the markets in China have been reacting positive to this because of the amount of infrastructure that needs to be built and how that's going to support industry. Overall, we're expecting that it's going to um, increase the demand for concrete by 90 to a by 90 to 150 cubic meters. That's 5 times the amount of concrete in the Three Gorges Dam project, 60 times what is in the Hoover Dam here in the United States. About 100,000 tons of explosives are going to be needed. Demand for cement, steel, copper, aluminum, and the fuels, especially coal needed to make them, is going to surge here in the years ahead in order to produce this. So a mega project that has been implemented in China in order to try to stimulate its economy, to lower its energy costs, and lower its energy independence. Now, one of the things that's interesting how this plays into the tariff situation is the river on which it's building this does flow into India. And this is creating a lot of tensions with India because it gives China then the ability to cut off water supply into India or to create massive surges of water that could flood infrastructure within India. And so India is very nervous about this at a time when India is having to negotiate a trade deal with the United States, and President Trump's put about a 25% tariff on India. So India is kind of between a rock and a hard place here, and how these negotiations go in the days and weeks ahead is going to be interesting to watch because President Trump would really like to use these trade agreements, including with India, to try to curb China's aggression. So another key to watch as we go forward. I'll continue to keep you updated as we go forward. And wish you a pleasant weekend, and be sure to like and subscribe excuse me, if you want to continue to get these updates from the trading floor. Thank you.